We're almost ready. It's about 6:29. So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:30. And I want to welcome everybody. I'm standing in tonight for Tim May, who is away. Are there any announcements? I would just like to welcome Jennifer Adams, our newest commissioner. And Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to say a little thing about yourself?
I'm thrilled to be here and serving on the commission. My background with library, I served 6 years on the Sonoma County Public Library Foundation. Very much enjoyed that, fundraising for the library. And now I'm very excited to be involved in this capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the commission regarding items not on the agenda? All right, then we're going to go to item number 4, which is an opportunity for library advisory boards to report on their activities to the commission. And Sebastopol has a representative.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Myrna Miller. I'm the vice chair of the Sebastopol Lab, and I'm here to tell you a little about our experience with our public forum. And one of the things I want to do, first of all, is to thank you for giving us funding so we were able to put together some outreach so that we would have a better attendance at our forum, which worked very well. We not only prepared paper questionnaire for people to give us feedback, but we also had a meeting. The way we held the meeting was it was the second hour of our normal lab meeting. So we could have everyone present that normally attends our lab meeting, which included, therefore, our representative from both the commission and the city and the foundation, and so it was also very well attended by the public. I think that the first thing I would like to do is to point out to you that Matthew Rose, who is our branch manager, did an excellent job of moderating the forum. He was able to keep everything moving along and everyone very happy that the first part was to go over all of the requests, and you have them before you from the last forum, and all of the progress that he and the staff had made on the things that the last forum had held to be the most important. After going over that with this group from the public, then we moved on to whatever their most pressing issues were, and he framed it very nicely to help people with their issues around the hours. And the people were very forthcoming. They were very positive. They were very upbeat. It was just a matter of saying, okay, working within the 40 hours that we have funding for now. We don't have funding for anything else, so that's not an issue. So that what would you like to have it look like? And we had both representation from elderly, from disabled people, from the parents of young children, and they all obviously have slightly different needs and expectations. And so you can see that there was an ABCD and laid out different people's view of how they would spread out the hours, with the absolute agreement that we needed a few hours open on Monday. The lab itself, at our meeting this last week, voted for number D, and this is where we want to put our efforts because of several things. You will see that one of them is the desire to make things Monday, Wednesday, Friday opening hour consistent, so people know when they can show up. Tuesday and Thursday are earlier because that meets the needs of the parents that have young children that come in for various tots, toddlers, baby programs, and they, as you can guests need to get out of there, get home, eat, and have their little naps, so that they need to start by 10. And that's why 2 days are set aside, therefore, to open at 10 and accommodate those young parents. They were also very respectful of Matthew in asking him what was the kind of downtime, when do people start clearing out at both the late hour and the late afternoon hour. And so that's why they were willing to stop at 5, close at 5, in order to get those hours together to put some on a Monday. So there's some opening. The students in particular have made clear to us that having Saturday closed when there's a holiday weekend is very, very difficult for them, because they don't even have any other branch to go to when they need to prepare materials for high school programs and exams and so forth and so on. So this design was to spread it around thinner, shorter days and so forth. We are owning that, but it's within that 40 hours. I think that our decision on D was trying to meet the needs of as many people as possible as it goes forward. You will also notice that there's a kind of a request in there that other branches might want to look at this model and see if there's anything in it, that would suit them, their patrons. This is our model for Sebastopol, but we think it would be a very good idea if others could be encouraged to use a different evening. So again, the students do have some place that at least they can drive to if they need something on a Thursday night as opposed to a Wednesday, and so forth and so on. I can't begin to tell you how wonderful it was to see the people so cooperative in being able to come forth with what they felt were their needs, to be able to negotiate with each other, to say, yeah, but we need this, to come out with different kinds of plans and put them all forward. So I think that it's important for you to know the Sebastopol community's points of view, and that what their advice is to us, what our advice is to you, and so forth, and that we had this very successful public forum. And there you have it. Any questions anybody might have? Not hearing any, I shall sit down. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other representatives from library advisory boards that wish to speak on their activities? Seeing no one, we'll move on and move to the special presentation on our actuarial report. So I welcome Nick Francis-Keen. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the sound okay?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Okay. Well, GASB 45 is the accounting standard that tells public entities, like the library, how they have to record an annual operating expense for having benefits, post-retirement benefits other than pensions. You might see the acronym OPEB in here. That refers to any kind of benefit program for people after retirement other than a pension plan. The library has a post-retirement medical plan where they pay some of the medical premiums for folks who retire after meeting certain requirements and conditions. And therefore, the library has to record an operating expense each year for that. The basic way this works, in simplest terms, it's designed so that, I have to stay next to this, don't I? It's designed so that when somebody reaches retirement age, in theory, the library at that point has already accrued the full cost of that person's post-employment benefits. That's the basic theory. An example you might think of, if we had a person who had a 20-year career, and let's suppose that person's already worked for us for 11 years, they have 9 years to go. We could take the total value of that person's projected future retirement benefits and break that up into 20 pieces, one piece allocated to each year of employment. So 11 pieces are in the past, one piece is this year, and we've got another 8 pieces, I guess, in future years. The way GASB 45 works is we look at the 11 pieces from the past, and we're saying, okay, we should have accrued a cost for that already. And the piece for this year, we'll pay for that this year. as the employees working this year. The other 8 pieces, we'll worry about those in the future as the person continues working. The 11 pieces from the past, we're going to take the sum total of that for this person and everybody else that has ever worked here, and we'll add those up, and we'll consider that a past employment or years of past service liability of some sort. And we're going to pay that off over a period of time to the extent that we haven't already. So each year, your annual cost, in very general terms, is this year's piece for all the people still working, plus some amortization of all the past years. That's basically how GASB 45 works. And the whole thrust of this whole hideous thing is to show how we calculate the amount we have to accrue each year as annual cost. Is that making sense? I was asked to provide a really high-level explanation. I'm not trying to insult anybody. So to do this, we have to estimate the future benefits we're going to pay to all these people. And we do that by getting a census of all of your employees and all the people who used to work here in the past that are entitled to retirement benefits. We have to forecast out into the future what medical premiums might be this year, next year, 30 years from now, and so on. What's the likelihood that people will remain employed long enough to qualify for retirement benefits? What's the probability people will retire in the year 2014, 2015, 2016, and so on? And what's the probability that somebody who once retires will survive to collect benefits a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, and so on? It's a very complex model, as you can imagine. And then we get all these projected payouts going way out into the future, and then we present value it all back down to one number. Isn't that fun? And the total number is called, we have a lovely acronym here, it's called APV-TPB. I'm in the middle of page 2 of my report. The actuarial present value of total projected benefits, there's a number in here of $19.3 million. Basically, if we had $19.3 million set aside in a fund somewhere in real money, that would be enough to cover all of the anticipated benefits for everybody who now works at the library and everybody who ever did in the past. That's basically what that number is supposed to mean. At the top of page 3, we've split that number up into 3 other numbers. The AAL is the actuarial accrued liability. That's basically the stuff for all past years. So in the example I was describing, that was 11/20ths for somebody. That 17.4 million there is the total value. That's the part of the 19 million, which is for years of employment people have already worked. And for anybody who's already retired, 100% of those people's benefits are included in the 17 million because they don't have any future years to keep working. The next line is 392,000. That's this year's slice. And the remaining 1.5 million is all the future years of employment, and we'll worry about those when people get there.
I have a quick question, if I may.
Sure.
We'll worry about those in future years when we get there. Is that what you mean here when you say this is a pay-as-you-go basis? So the library continues to
No,
fund
that's
the
actually a
benefits?
different concept. Pay-as-you-go means that we don't have any money set aside to cover these obligations, that every time we have to pay benefits to a retiree, the library opens up its checkbook and pays the benefits.
Got it. Thank you.
We don't have any other outside source of funding that does it for us.
Okay. Thanks.
The next thing I think I should probably talk about is how we calculate the amount that gets accrued each year. If we could go to Exhibit 2 of my report, which is on page 5. Oh, there, by the magic of television. There it is. Okay. If we look under the June 30, 2014, the middle column there, we'll start off with the 17.4 million. That's the total liability we've got for past years. And the methodology that was established by somebody before I came along was to amortize this on a moving 30-year time period. Instead of having a fixed time period that writes down over time, we've got a moving 30 years. And every time we do this, we start fresh with 30 years. That's one of the approaches that's permitted under the accounting rules. So we take this 17.4 million, we amortize that over 30 years, we get a one-year payment of 813,000. That's where that number is. Then we add to that the 392,000, that was this year's slice. So we get a total of $1,205,000. It's called Annual Required Contribution, or ARC. That's really a terrible name because it's not required, it's not a contribution. It's sort of an intermediate step in coming up with the number we really want. It's kind of a bad name. And at the bottom of the page, we take that ARC of 1205, we make a couple of adjustments to it, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then we end up with the amount you actually have to show as an operating expense on your financial statements. $1,223,000. Coming up with that number is really the whole point of what GASB 45 is all about. Is this making sense so far?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. If we go to the next page, this is really kind of the heart of what the report, Exhibit 3. This summarizes the numbers that was on the last page for the first 2 years and then projects out 3 years into the future. So you're seeing how the ARC gets developed year by year. There's a heading most of the way down called Funding by the Library. These are the numbers that show how much we're estimating we're actually going to pay out in benefits to retired people year by year. So estimating $565,000 in the year we're now in, $595,000 next year, and so on.
And that is the pay-as-you-go?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
That's the pay-as-you-go. So that's what that means.
And those are estimated on past experience and this model you talked about
Yes.
mortality and how many people we expect to remain in the system, et cetera.
Right. It basically comes out of my computer model.
So, excuse me, one more question. So actually, we should be paying the annual OPEB cost, but we're paying like less than half of that in pay-as-you-go. Is that correct? And so then we keep accruing a bigger debt.
Yeah, the annual OPEB cost can be thought of as the true cost of this program. Yeah. But you only have to pay out what you owe to the people who are already retired.
Right.
So, right, you are building up kind of a deficit. And you can see what that is down at the bottom. We have this thing called the net OPEB obligation. What that means is, if we look at this first year, we've got a cost of $1,223,000, but we're only going to pay out $565,000 in benefits. The difference between those numbers gets accumulated on your balance sheet as like an unpaid obligation, an obligation we'll have to pay off in future years. And that gets accumulated, and so you see on these numbers at the bottom, as of June 30th, 2013, you had an obligation on your balance sheet of $5,634,000. That was the number that was provided to me. That was already there. And so you can see how this number is going to slowly grow over time. If we were to pull this model out 20, 30, 40 years into the future, eventually this thing would parabola up and come back down, eventually. But it's going to take a long time.
Not really. It's going to be here sooner than we think.
So, so the purpose of this schedule is to kind of, it shows how all these numbers interlock together. Going back up to just below where it says the ARC of 1205, we have this line that says plus interest, $281,000. That's 1 year's interest on that $5,634,000 at the bottom of the page. So if you took $5,634,000 and multiplied by 5%, you'd get that $281,000. That's all it is. And the $263,000, the offsetting item, it says plus ARC adjustment. That number is calculated as an amortization of the $5,634,000 using the same amortization factor that's used to come up with the amortization piece up above of 813. The purpose of that line is to prevent us from double counting. The way the arithmetic works is a little complicated, and I'm not trying to be condescending, but the purpose of this is to prevent us from double counting, so we're not paying for things twice. And you see the 281 and the 263 sort of cancel each other out. They're about the same size. It's a little bit of difference. And that's how we come up with the annual OPEB cost, which is the amount we have to accrue each year. And those really are the most important numbers in this report. After this, I've just got a summary of what all the benefit rules are that people qualify for, a summary of all the different assumptions we've made about future things. I can go into those in some detail if you really care. We have to make a lot of different assumptions about events in the future. But the real important numbers are here actually on Exhibit 3. And if you get Exhibit 3, you really have gotten what this is all about. Is this helping?
I think you've done a terrific job in explaining a very complex situation. And speaking for myself, we don't like these numbers at all.
This is complicated stuff, and there's a lot of jargon in here, and I apologize for that. Under professional guidelines, there's a lot of things I have to put in the report. So, but I've tried to make it as easy to read as I could.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions from the commission? All right, thank you so much. And then if there's any member of the public who wishes to comment. All right, we can move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done.
All right, the next item on the agenda are the commission reports. And we're starting off with the Ad Hoc Joint Powers Agreement Committee. And I talked to the co-directors about this when we were going over the agenda, and we decided to keep this on until it's completed in August, and then this will drop off the agenda. There is nothing new to report at this time. It's still out for review by the cities. And
Has any city reviewed and accepted it?
Yes, the first 5 signatories have now all reviewed and passed the revised JPA.
thank you. The Ad Hoc Revenue Committee has not met. I'm thinking that that we'll try to schedule a meeting with our new CFO and give him a week, perhaps, to just to introduce ourselves to him and talk about what we're looking for. So I'll talk to you about perhaps trying to set up a time for them. And the committee members are Jennifer Adams. Did you know that you're on the financial committee?
I do now.
I think Tim made this decision, and David Ebright. So we look forward to meeting our new CFO and staying on top of the financial stuff. So then the Ad Hoc Director Search Committee, you were going to give us anything new? Anything old? This is going to drop off too.
We've hired a new director.
Yes, he starts June 2nd.
And he was here for a visit or no? That was...
Yes, the end of April. He was here over the course of a long weekend with his family looking at housing, and we had the opportunity to meet briefly with him at David's house. And I think he's in the process this week of traveling across the country.
Okay, great. Looking forward to that.
It's nice to hear that he's looked at housing and he's still decided to come.
Okay, any comments from any members of the public on any of these items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 6.2, Commissioner comments. And this is information that the commissioners have, and particularly about lab activities. And I understand that Jamie attended the Petaluma.
No, I did not attend, but I'm prepared to report on behalf of Commissioner May in his absence.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, shall I start? A couple of items. During the month of April, the Petaluma Library participated in the Declaration for the Right to Libraries, which is a movement by the American Library Association to increase awareness about the role of libraries in communities and cultivate a network of community allies and advocates for the library. Staff from the Petaluma Library attended the Petaluma City Council meeting on April 7th to accept a proclamation proclaiming April 13th through 19th as National Library Week and affirming the importance of libraries. Secondly, the Petaluma Libraries won a Best Novelty Specialty Award in the non-commercial category for their entry in the recent Petaluma Butter and Eggs Day Parade. Staff from the library participated in the parade with 8 to 10 school libraries, so it was a group of librarian staff and students and children, and it was coordinated by librarian Kate Keaton, and she reports that everyone had a great time. And lastly, the Master Gardeners are creating a seed lending library at Petaluma like Healdsburg has. The plan is to give them a small area in the library, and the Master Gardeners will be setting it up.
Thank you. And David, Sonoma, you attended Sonoma's?
I did. That was just, seems like just yesterday, but it was on the 8th of May. And I went largely to represent the need for a wide representation on any sort of a committee that's being formed around the tax measure, and there was some interest and some names brought forward. And then some of the reports that were made were that there's a real uptick in programming at the Sonoma branch. Their branch manager has started integrating music into their programming in a big way, and she's having it not in their small forum room, but in the main reading room. And it's just been, there have been no complaints about noise on these times when they have them, and just a real enthusiastic audience. So that's building. And sort of along with that, the Friends of the Library have taken on providing a coffee service in the room. And they're doing this as a pilot because we've now allowed, with our new, about to be approved behavior policy, lidded drinks in the library. And these drinks will have lids, and there will be no spillage. So the Friends can earn a little money, perhaps, and it makes people happy to have coffee, speaking from experience.
And it smells good.
And it smells good. They had an impromptu visit from the new state librarian, Greg Lucas, who dropped in on the Sonoma Library wearing shorts and Birkenstocks, it looked like. Very casual, very nice guy. He was on his way to a weekend in Sea Ranch, so I'm wondering if he's a property owner in Sonoma County. That could be very interesting. Gonna have to look that up at the assessor's office. A little research. Or I could just ask him. Let's see. What else is there? They're having a quarterly book sale starting, that would be this Wednesday. They have a new Friends of the Library website that will go live on June 1st, svfol.org, as in Sonoma Valley Friends of the Library. And they have a new book group starting on August 16th, which will, get this, they will be reading works that display the influence in contemporary literature of Greek and Roman works of classical literature. So name 5, quick. No, just kidding. Let's see, and they're looking, their city did pass the new JPA, and they have advertised and are searching for their commissioner to appoint. So that's, it closes on May 21st. That's all.
Oh, thank you. I look forward to meeting with the Guerneville Library Advisory Board this coming Wednesday, so I don't have much to report on them. They are working to increase outreach to teens, to get more teens to come to the Guerneville Library branch, and they're doing that with the help of their new youth members. The Sebastopol Library Advisory Board, as you heard from Myrna, has been very active, and they have done a good job on that. One of the other things that they have worked on recently has ended up resulting in the branch librarian being awarded a grant from the state library to do outreach, and that started with the Library Advisory Board trying different ways to do outreach to homebound people. So that's a very successful effort on their part. The Friends of the Library in Sebastopol will be having their book sale starting Wednesday through this Saturday, and I hope it's successful. And I think that's all that I had in my notes to report. Thank you. Anything?
I have nothing to report. The Santa Rosa lab will meet on the 21st, and I will be attending that meeting.
The Cloverdale Library, LAB, doesn't seem to have anybody there. Susan was the commissioner, but I will attend their lab meeting tomorrow night.
Okay.
In addition, Windsor Friends of the Library had an open house on May the 3rd, which was nicely attended, and they had large tables with big kind of butcher paper on it, and people wrote on the paper all of the things that they would like to see the library provide for them. I don't have a collection of that. They were putting it together. Healdsburg hasn't met. They had a book sale, but I don't know how much money they made.
Thank you.
Nothing specific to report other than just coordinated with Tom, and I can help coverage in the northern territories of Sonoma County as far as attending labs.
You have a horse?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments, public comments? All right, then moving on to item number 7, approval of the minutes. And it's good we have a quorum so that we can get these taken care of. Although I don't know. You weren't at the last meeting. You weren't appointed at that point, so there's just 3 of us. Maybe we have to carry that over.
Yeah, technically, you probably don't have a quorum to vote on those matters because you do not have 4
Right.
people who
Who
are
were
present
actually
at those
present.
meetings. And that'll get more and more difficult as time goes by. These could be the minutes that never get approved.
All right, so
What
we'll
happens then?
put those over onto the next agenda in June.
So there'll be 5 sets of minutes at the next meeting.
I didn't see any changes, but doesn't count. Okay, correspondence and press coverage. Did everybody get a chance to take a look at the correspondence and press coverage? Any questions on that? I wanted to say I thought there were some really good suggestions by the public on some procedural issues that affect the customer. So I would love to hear how that ends up, if there's any changes made in the future on some of those things. So there are no, the consent calendar, sorry. There's one item on the consent calendar. If no one has any objection, we'll go ahead and approve that, or consider it approved. Hearing no objection, it's approved. And that takes us to number 10. There are no action items by motion. And that now takes us to number 11. Action items by resolution. The first one is 11.1, adopt revisions to standards of behavior. And this was a document that we had reviewed at our prior meeting, and we'd had some minor change made to it. So does anybody have any further questions, or do I hear a motion to approve this, to adopt it?
I move that we adopt the revisions to the library standards of behavior policy.
In a second?
Second?
Okay. Any discussion? Any further discussion on that? Do I ask for comment from the... Any comment from the public on the standards of behavior? One, Barbara, do you want to come down to the microphone, please?
Yeah, I have a question. My name is Barbara Fisher, and I'm with the Santa Rosa Library Advisory Board Group. And my question has to do with allowing drinks in the library, as long as they are capped and or covered. What does that mean? I mean, that means you can bring in a bottle of water, but you can't drink from it? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think that's what is meant. What is meant is that as soon as you have taken a drink, you will recover it.
Okay, so you are allowed to drink?
Yes, you're allowed to
Oh,
drink,
okay.
right.
Okay, that's my question.
I mean, not
because
drink.
that's not very clear.
You're allowed to take sips of water or whatever covered beverage you have, as long as it's legal.
And that includes alcoholic drinks?
Not yet.
No, that's what I meant by as long as it's legal. I do not
Well-
believe that drinking in public is legal.
A can of beer would be legal?
A can of beer is not legal to drink
Or a
in
bottle
public.
of beer is legal?
Currently covered by the law.
I'm sorry, explain that?
You can't you can't be walking down the street or in a public place with an open container of alcohol and consuming it unless it's a legitimate place of business that has an alcohol license. So
And
it's already covered by the law. We don't need to prohibit it expressly in our behavior policy because everything in our behavior policy assumes, first of all, that it's legal.
Well, if you look under Section 3, Item 2, it specifically says no alcohol.
Okay, that takes care of it. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, any other comments? Then we have a motion on the floor So we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right, unanimously passed. Or adopted, sorry. So the second item, 11.2, adopt email use policy and policy on other post-employment benefits. The commission had already reviewed and approved these policies, and we just did not have the resolutions made at that time, so now it's just a matter of passing a motion to adopt these by resolution. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Any comments from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We apologize for that omission at previous meetings.
Okay. So now we're down to the discussion items. The first item is 12.1, auditor selection and engagement for fiscal year 2013-14. Does Jamie or David want to talk about this a little bit?
Sure. We are recommending that we use Beal Soper for one more fiscal year for our financial statements, primarily because we're in the process of transitioning to a new chief financial officer. And this firm has been very responsive and professional. We appreciate the quality of their work and would like to continue using them just for the purposes of stability and continuity while we're moving to a new CFO.
I have a question in reading his letter down at the bottom of the first paragraph where he talks about the required statement information, where it says they will not, okay, so they will, these are required by general accounting principles, but the management discussion and analysis is not going to be included, is currently elected to be omitted by management. And I just wondered about that because I had looked at some older audits where they were included, and it was very helpful, I felt, to read those. And in the last one, didn't they include some?
I don't think so. There were findings, and then management responded to each finding, but I think this is something different. I don't think it was included in the very prior audit.
Back in like 2005, I think they did.
Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
then.
So I'm just wondering if it's.
I can do some more research on that and
Could you
report
just
back at the next
ask
meeting.
him if it, because it seems like it might be helpful. It, was a more expansive kind of discussion about the financial situation, and so I don't know.
Sure.
I wonder if you could find out before we get together with the CFO, the financial committee, later this month, if it would be possible to find out from Will about that particular item.
Sure. Do you have a set meeting for that?
No, I don't. But I'm thinking about a week after he gets here, it would be good
sure.
to get together with him.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Does anybody else have a question? Beth? All right, so if there's nothing further for us to do, if there are no questions, any comments or questions from the public about the hiring of the auditor? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 12.2, recommended OPEB trust administrator.
Okay.
Okay, Jamie.
So
thanks.
on this item, as the cover memo says, we conducted a RFP and a search process. We originally were not going to do so, and then it was discussed, I think, at the last commission meeting that we thought, this is a big investment, and it's eventually going to be a lot of money accumulated in this trust. So we really want to make sure we choose the right administrator. We put out an RFP, and we got two service providers that responded, CalPERS and PARS. Thank you. And we interviewed both of them, had presentations from both of them, got our questions answered and so forth. And what we're recommending this evening for your consideration is CalPERS. We felt that they had the best combination of good customer service, reasonable fees, and asset management. So what we've included in the packet here is the presentation PowerPoint that we were shown when we had the interview with them, and then a sample contract that they provided to us, which would be the agreement we would enter into with them.
So I think the only thing is we don't know how much it's going to cost, and it says the prices can, the cost can change each year and without notice. And so do we have a ballpark figure on how much it might cost?
I think it's a percentage of the amount that we put into it.
And so
you're
now
right.
we're putting 600. How much are we putting in initially? 500 from the current budget and 100,000 from this budget.
Right, we have 500,000 in the current year, and the commission adopted a 14-15 budget that included another 100,000 for next year.
Are there any questions by?
I'm fine with. Did you see? This is a very nice and kind of an exhaustive presentation. Did you see a similar presentation from the other two?
Yes.
They all.
Well, the other one.
They have a reputation, and obviously did a very nice presentation. I think this is.
Yeah, and what we learned was that this particular work group is sort of separate from CalPERS proper with the pension money.
Anybody else? All right, any comments from the public?
Hi,
Hi,
I'm Kirsten Merrihew from Santa Rosa, and I was wondering, did Bruce McConnell have any recommendations? I thought when he was discussing this last time that he mentioned a name, and I don't remember what it was. So was it this one, or was it something else? And I was going to ask about CalPERS' reputation, and whether you've kind of answered that because you said it's separate from the pension, but nevertheless, the name when it was first mentioned did bring up a bit of a warning, because they have been under fire for some other things, and so I wonder whether this is something that should be considered a little more as far as the other two options, and what the reasons is that CalPERS was chosen and the other two were not.
I think that there were only two options. One was CalPERS, and the other was this PARS.
Right, PARS.
And actually, initially, I think Bruce McConnell had leaned toward CalPERS, but then he decided it would be much better to do the request for proposal, and they responded, and so did PARS. And so upon a close review and meeting with those two agencies, I believe he supported this decision.
Yeah, if the commission's interested, we could provide a copy of the RFP and the criteria that we used to evaluate the two responders.
Is there anyone else in the field that might be considered, or are these two the main ones?
I think when they sent the request for proposal out, they sent it to all the participants in the field that we're aware of, and only two responded. So it was a self-limiting process that way.
All right, thank you.
So at what point are you going to, because it says the
We
future
would bring
board
this back
action
at the
is-
next meeting,
Okay.
the June 2nd
All right.
meeting.
Okay, we look forward to that. Now we are moving on to item 12.3, which is revisions to Library Advisory Board membership application form. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the proposed changes in the Library Advisory Board membership application. I welcome it. I think it will be very helpful to the process of finding out, the extent of the interest and commitment on behalf of people who apply for the position. So any comments from the commission?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's burdensome. I don't think it will prohibit anyone from applying, but at the same time, it does give us a certain amount of necessary information.
Who will vet this? Will this be entirely up to the local boards, or will anybody else review these and say yay or nay based on?
Well, I think the process is for them to get a copy of the application form, if they have a resume, to attach it, and to write a statement of their interests on serving on the Library Advisory Board, and then to forward it on to Rebecca. Is that correct? And then Rebecca will get a copy to the branch manager and to the commission. And the process that would be good to follow would be for the commissioner to contact the applicant and just talk to them and let them know what they can expect by a commitment to a Library Advisory Board. And I believe the branch manager would also be contacting them and interviewing them.
Yeah, so the process isn't meant to change, it's just the application. It's a little more streamlined.
And gets more information.
Asks for a little bit more information. It's more in line with advisory boards for the county, and for the various cities in Sonoma County.
It's all good.
Sure.
Any comments from the public? All right, hearing none, we will move on to item 12.4, the family medical leave policy. Did you want to talk about this?
Sure.
at all, Jane?
So this is a new policy, and it's one of the policies that's been on the to-do list for a long time. So we're really happy to bring it forward tonight as a draft. It has been vetted through the library's labor management committee, and the union supports this. So we're happy to take any questions you have on the policy itself.
I wasn't clear from looking at this what prompted the need for a change to the policy.
It's currently in our MOU, and we wanted to flesh it out a little bit more and make sure the library staff really understood all of their rights. And what's in the current MOU is fairly brief, as I recall. So in our labor negotiations last year, we had agreed that we would remove it from the contract language, pull it out into a separate policy, and that's what we've done.
I'd also just point out, since it originally appeared in the MOU, there have been some changes to federal law that were not reflected in the MOU.
Any other questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you folks are happy with it and can live with it, but any kind of a policy that has 4.5 pages of definitions scares the bejesus out of me. But that's fine. If you like it. Patrick, what do you think?
Yes. That's why it took so long to get here.
I guess so. Good work.
Well, my only question is, if there's a change in federal law again next year, we need to revise the policy to comply, and we'll need to bring it back here, correct? So every time there's a revision.
Instead of revising the MOU.
Right.
It's a lot easier.
Easier to revise a policy than to renegotiate an MOU. True.
Any comments from the public? All right, hearing none, we will move on to the management report, item 12.5. And I do want to say how active and involved you two are and how appreciated that is, so thanks. Anything you want to point out? Any questions from the commission about the management report? We're looking at the first one, item 12.5.1.
Oh, I could elaborate on one little aspect of this report, which is not clear if you read it. I'm just sort of skim over the digital branch and don't really say anything about implementation timeline for it, and I should have. We are tentatively planning a soft rollout of the digital branch, the new website and portal on the auspicious day of Friday the 13th. That would be next month. And it'll be a quiet rollout with an option for people to go look at the new website from the old website. And then after a couple of weeks, that will flip, and it'll be the other way around. They'll automatically come to the new website and have the option to go look at the old one if they're more comfortable with that. And then over time, the old one will, as is the way of websites, become non-existent.
And the discovery layer that's mentioned in here will roll out subsequent to the website?
Yeah, it'll be, I believe it's scheduled for Independence Day, sort of. We're thinking of it as, yay, freedom. So 5th of July, I think, is the rollout date for the discovery layer. And what that is an improved way to search the catalog, much more like how people are accustomed to searching on the web for things generally these days, expecting a nicely relevancy ranked and easily filtered search to come back. So that's what people will be getting with Enterprise.
Terrific. I have a question. LSTA stands for?
The Library Services and Technology Act.
Okay.
It's federal funding that is dished out to the states proportionate to their population served.
Okay. And after we received this $5,000, there was a subsequent award of another $2,000 to each of the public libraries in the state for popular fiction titles. So we'll be spending $7,000 total.
Oh, lovely. That's great. And I did want to make sure that the other commissioners were aware of the workers' compensation insurance policy. I think we run into this every year where we don't get much notice about it, and we always have questions. So if you have any, you might want to go back and look at last year's notes on the website about it. And if you have any questions, anything that you think you might need to know, if you could shoot those questions to, who would be the best? Well, to you two, to pass on to Patrick for, to gather any information you need, because it's something that we'll have to approve at our next meeting, right? And so we won't have much notice.
Yes, thank you. And if you do have any questions, it would be good to hear them in the next week or two, because we're working on that commission packet now. It's only 3 weeks away.
Okay. Okay, so shall we move on to, any comments from the, we'll hold comments till the end of the 12.5 section. So then we have staffing changes and the performance management reports, 12.5.2. So we talked about structuring that differently, but we'll look for that. Is it next time it'll come?
Yeah, I haven't actually had a chance to talk to Patrick about that yet, but I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions about any of this? Should we move on to the monthly?
I just had a quick question, and Patrick, you probably know the answer to this, and that is annual reviews what's annual for reviews in terms of performance reviews? Is it a year from date of hire? Is it by the end of the fiscal year? When is it?
It's based on supposed to be based on their anniversary date.
Okay.
And just for the benefit of the new commissioners, this trying to have the staff be current in their employment evaluations and reviews has been an issue that's been really important to the commission, because we feel that that's the only way to, I mean, it's a way to reward employees and a way to hold people accountable and to make sure people have the training that they need to do this public service job. So we get this report, and we're hoping that it will
Encourage
everybody to get it done. Now, you do say one manager does not have any overdue items.
Woohoo. I don't know who that is.
Oh, okay.
Must be Keo.
Is it Keo?
It must be.
Well, congratulations to that manager for having all of their evaluations done. We really appreciate every effort that supervisors and managers are able to put into that. And we know that your time is stretched tremendously, but it is really important to employees, as much as I think oftentimes employees don't really enjoy the process. But it's a very valuable process. So thank you very much for your efforts in this area, and we're hoping to see it continue to improve. So that leads us to the monthly financial report, and there's that pesky workers' compensation item 5940, and I think this is where I had read that there had been an insufficient initial budget amount. That's where I had seen that. And that's happened, I think, before. So I don't know why that happens, because you go through this huge process with the workers' comp, the strategy to get the insurance payment, and then it never quite somehow kind of works right.
On this particular year, I don't honestly know what happened, because we did have the new premium, and somehow or another it didn't make its way in the budget adjustments.
And it seems to be thought that overages will be offset by savings in other budget lines within salaries and benefits, so that's probably why it never came forward as an adjustment.
Okay. All right, well, good luck this year. I think last year it was so with our not having a CFO, a regular CFO, at the time we were doing all of this and all the confusion and stuff, it probably contributed to that not happening.
Well, I think every year the commission approves the budget prior to knowing the amount of the workers' comp insurance renewal. So
right.
That's how it goes every year.
That's true. Well, okay.
When this does come up, I think, at the next meeting, will there be will we be able to see an injury rate, claims submitted, claims paid, that type of information? Will that be in the broker's report, or is that, I'm thinking, things like workplace safety and how that, like I said, injury rates and where some of these claims might come from?
The proposal itself probably will not include that information, but it is information that we can provide. We already have that information for the last calendar year, and actually we have it up through the first quarter of this year, end of March. So come the June meeting, we won't have the full report, but we'll at least be able to give information up to that point in time.
And it occurs to me that you've done like a study of that in the past to compare years. Is that true? That might be helpful. Would that be something that you'd be interested in, so we could see if there's a trend? So if that would be possible,
sure.
Patrick.
We have that information.
Like maybe for the last 5 years, we could compare, see if we're improving or not.
Mm-hmm.
That would be good. So we're wrapping up towards the end of the fiscal year, and Um, It looked like our bottom line was on target. Is that correct? We've spent 70% of our budget, and is that right? And we're about 73% through the year, 75%?
Yes, this report is as of the end of March, and at that point, we were 75% through the fiscal year. So we're a little under.
Did the new commissioners have the list of the account codes so that they can go? Is that something they got?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
That might be helpful to them, especially since they're going to be on the financial
Yeah,
committee.
we're in the process of revising that
Right.
substantially, and it will be coming to you at your next commission meeting, so I'm not sure how useful the old chart of accounts
Okay.
might be,
Well,
but
they
we can
might-
certainly provide it.
They might, it might be useful to them, just if they wanted to go back and look at any older budgets.
Yeah, it was also in the budget workshop packets,
Okay.
but we can email it separately.
Do you think that would help?
I saw them in the
little
budget
codes?
packet workshop, and I don't know how when they're updated into the new chart of accounts, how useful that might be. There's probably going to be some crosswalk that's going to tell me this was this and it's now this. Is that how that's supposed to work?
Have you done this before?
Sounds like you've done this before. The crosswalk, you used the word crosswalk, which is a big word in our vocabulary these days.
It has a lot of letters. But I'm assuming that there is that sort of information. It was this and now it's this, or
Yeah, all the codes and numbering will change,
Yeah, right.
and we've been working on updating the titles and the descriptions associated with each sub-object code.
So the county's chart of accounts is about this thick, and the library's is about this thick. So of the total available codes in the county, we're using a small sliver. But interestingly enough, the county's process involves combining many and eliminating. They're eliminating, how many did they say? Dozens or
think
possibly
Bruce said
hundreds of
thousands.
of codes, and yet they're still winding up with a telephone book. But they're managing to eliminate some ones that we need to use, so we're having to ask them to create new codes just for us in their EFS system. It's kind of amazing, I think.
Wow.
But
actually.
it's been a good process for us too, because we've really updated a lot and made it current and accurate and streamlined. So
Right, what she said.
you'll see it next time.
So if you don't want the old code
I think
key,
if it's available on demand sometime down the line, that
Okay.
would be great, sufficient for me.
okay.
Okay.
Right, thanks. Are there any comments or questions about the financial report? Okay. What about the quarterly gifts and donations report? Nothing? Okay.
I would note that we have very generous friends and foundation, and thank you to both groups broadly defined. Our friends, of course, exist at each branch, and one group of friends for all of the Santa Rosa libraries, but this is a group that earns every nickel the hard way, and the fact that we received $56,000 for the quarter from the two groups combined is, I think it's kind of astonishing, and thank you very much.
Yes, thanks. Thanks for those words. It's very true. It looks like it's gone up in the recent by quite a bit. So that is lovely of them to love the library. And the special revenue funds report is on the back.
This is our favorite report.
I know that, but I don't think you seriously mean it. So there's still work to be done on this report to make it really accurate as to what the money can be used for? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that the outstanding part of it? I remember Bruce talking about wanting to volunteer to help with that when he gets back.
Yeah, there are files of folders this thick on each of these that include all the documentation around the money that was originally given and any restrictions. And we really need to spend some time going through those and documenting the intended purpose, making sure we're honoring that.
Uh-huh. Yes, absolutely. And working on the policy for giving.
Right.
Yeah. Any comments? Any public comments on the management report items that we've just gone over? Hearing none, we will move on to Library Advisory Board appointments. And we have one to Cloverdale. Anne Mahone is going to be taking a vacant position on the Cloverdale Library Advisory Board for a term ending June 30th, 2017. Do I hear a motion to approve that?
So moved. But I do have a question. But I spoke to her, and she was unclear, and I'm unclear what her term is. Does her term really go to 2017, or does it simply go till August?
Oh, no, the Library Advisory Boards don't change.
Oh, I'm
when we
sorry.
change.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're right there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
It goes to 2017.
That's how she got me confused, because she kept talking about, well, when does this? She was confusing the commission with the advisory board, as was I. So,
Okay,
thank
good.
you.
And is there a second?
I second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. All right, so moved. And the next item is items to include in the commission notes for the next monthly newsletter. Suggestions? Well, how about the book fund, the $7,000 per branch?
The grant funds?
The grant fund.
It's not per branch, though. This is actually for the entire
Oh,
system.
for the entire system.
Yes, and this is, if you ever get a chance to speak to a legislator, you might just mention that it would be logical for every library to get the same amount, but as it is, they gave it to every library jurisdiction. So little San Anselmo Library gets the same $7,000 as the vast Sonoma County Library because it's easier to distribute the funds that way. And some of us think that might not be exactly the
Intent.
most fair way, but
Okay.
we like the money.
I'll put it on the list of things to
I
mention.
could give you a long list.
And perhaps the grant that Matthew was able to get.
Maybe the website.
Oh, the website
roll out,
would be.
little heads up, and
That'd be
Perhaps
great.
the standards of behavior
standards of
revisions.
behavior
I would
revision.
suggest.
Did you get all those things? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a monthly newsletter, right? So we can hold off on talking about the August meeting a little bit till the July newsletter.
Could do a hold the date if it's going to be a hoop-de-doo. I mean, the August meeting, kick off first meeting of the newly seated commission, you mean, with the... Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Hold the date, August 4th.
What about the revision to the Library Advisory Board application?
That's good.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, you haven't adopted that yet.
Yeah, right. Never mind, scratch that.
Oh, well, that'll be at the next meeting.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else. I'm probably not thinking of something, but when do you send it out, Rebecca? In a week. So if we think of anything, we can let you know? Okay. All right. All right, so I guess our next meeting will be on June 2nd at 6:30 here in the City Council chambers. And we will be adjourning now at, what time is that?
7:40.
7:40. I think it's a record. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing.